Good morning, Greene County. Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it. Well, first I want to extend a thank you to Cindy for rescheduling. She was actually scheduled to do this today, and I appreciate her giving up her time so that the members of the collector's office could be here to go over the Board of Equalization. Looking forward to it. I have. Yeah, it's great working with you, Alan. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. All right. So this is the Tuesday huddle, or how I learned to stop worrying and love the Board of Equalization and save the county some dough while we're at it. Yes, we're very happy about that. So this is what we're going to go over today. What is the BOE? We made some changes. How did we improve? How much money did we save the county? And what the participants thought. And you were up there. That is from, is that 22 flight?
Yeah, 22.
Yeah, so it's the most recent flight that we have. So that's pretty cool. All right. So Bill, and I apologize, I am Christian Carroll
And I'm
with
Bill
the
O'Brien.
assessor's office, and this is Bill O'Brien.
Yep.
And we're actually with the assessor's office. We're just poking fun. So first off, what is the Board of Equalization? Bill, what's the Board of Equalization?
So the Board of Equalization is a board of 8 citizens here in Greene County, and they will hear appeals for property valuation. So basically, if you're a property owner and you get a value change note, you want one?
Yeah. If
We'll
you
start them
got,
at the same time.
if you
get
live in
one-
Greene County, you've probably received something that looks a little bit like this.
value change notice.
Right.
And that happens every couple of years. And so what we want to do is, you're a property owner and you don't like that value. You think it's way too high, and you want to have some recourse, right? So the Board of Equalization is there to hear your appeal. And they hear your appeal, they determine your appeal based on the evidence that you provide and that the assessor's office provides. They also, they're there to listen to those arguments, and then they can either agree with you and lower it, or they can agree with the assessor and leave it alone. They can even raise it if they want. So the clerk is also a part of this process, and they're there to keep the records. And also, if the assessor's office brings to them some information that maybe there's some omission of some properties, they can put those on the record as well.
So I see it's an 8-person board. Who makes up that 8-person board, Bill?
Is this now just okay?
We got some time to fill.
We're going to
here.
fill some time.
Yeah.
So it is, there are, in the state statute says you get 3. And normally those 3 are who?
Ooh, those are usually filled by the county commission.
Yes.
And in Greene County, we're unique in that, Brent, how many years ago was it? 1985. 85. We split off, and we now have representatives that are from the city and from the county. So we have 8 members. So we have 5 from the city and 3 from the county. So they can hear county or city cases independently. And it actually kind of gives property owners during the appeal process a little bit more of a representative review of the information, because it's not made up of politicians, it's not made up of officials, it's made up of county lay people. So they're people that are possibly in the real estate industry, business professionals, people that have had experience with personal property accounts, real estate, things of that nature. So it's a very nice situation that we have. It can be sometimes a little cumbersome, but I think it gives the appellants a pretty fair shake in how they can have their information independently reviewed.
And so the board will meet once a month, and then in July, the bulk of their work comes when all the appeals come in July. And so also the clerk's office and the assessor's office is a part of that board composition process. So the assessor's office is there to help them answer questions and advise, and then the clerk's office is there to record whatever happens. And that's all posted to the public, and it's all open to the public. It's very transparent.
Right. So they do meet monthly. Usually in the first part of the year, there's very little business that's presented because we still have opportunities to make corrections to the tax book. Usually after the end of July into August is when Form 11A has been closed, the tax book has been presented, and that's when we present changes to the Board of Equalization if there's been an error or an omission or something that needs to be corrected for that tax year. The bulk of the board's business, of course, then takes place during the month of July. That's when the formal hearing process begins for appellants that feel that they have a valuation situation that they want to bring that would affect that tax year. So in July, we had hearings, and those hearing outcomes will affect the valuation for 2024 and thereby affect the tax bill that those property owners will receive in 2024. That is a picture of the members of the board in 1956. I think someone just got back from vacation. And then here's a similar photo 5 years later. So as we stated, the Board of Equalization is a yearly process in July. Now, it just doesn't start in our office or with the appellants in the month of July. It starts much earlier than that. So we have a series of informal hearings where on this value change letter, we actually talk about it. There are 3 steps to appeal. There's an informal appeal, which is basically a phone call. Could be an in-person conversation. That's where the property owner may bring information that we are unaware of. So raise your hand if the assessor can come look at the inside of your home. No, unless we're invited. So let's say there's been some structural issues, some water damage, something that has happened to the inside of the home that causes your house to be a little bit less value than what we might have it for. That's where we can get that information. And that's what happens a lot of times during the informal hearing process.
And that's what you see, like our appraisers that are here today. So when you see them go out in their cars, that's what they're going to do. They're going to, remeasure properties. They're going to look and work with the property owner to solve these problems so that they don't even get to the Board of Equalization. This is really a huge piece of our spring and early summer. And our office is entirely almost focused on this one task to get all of these hearings pared down so that the board has, can laser focus on some very, the ones that aren't going to settle, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, I believe the gentleman in the green shirt.
That's our boss. That's our boss.
Yes, sir.
I'm your boss.
Yes.
The informal hearings.
Oh man.
That is a very excellent
so good.
question. And we're gonna put a hold on that question because we have a slide that's gonna go over that here in just a moment. When you have to make an elected official wait for an answer. Yeah, as we said, most of them get settled beforehand because that's kind of what we're supposed to be doing. We're here. We set the value for the county, but we're also members of the county. We're also can act as liaisons for the public and try to make it an easy process. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well.
We don't want to keep Alan waiting, so we'll just go quickly through a day in the life.
Ooh,
So 8:30.
it was so quick.
8:30, just real quick. 8:30 in this room, July 17th of this year, so a couple weeks ago today. Julia Carter from the clerk's office sits here on the end. As appellants come in, she will meet with them, and we made a couple changes this year that we'll go over later in a later slide. So this year, as appellants came in, they would get with her, and they would basically go in order to meet in front of the board as they came in. In previous years, they had set times, 9, 9:15, 9:30, and we'll go over some reasons why we changed that this year. So they sit where you're sitting now. They wait for the board. They see it all. It's all open and transparent, open to the public. And at 9 o'clock it starts, and we go until we're done. And if it goes into the next day and the next day and the next day, it just does. And that's the quick day in the life of the Board of Equalization. Very quick.
So here are some numbers for the last few years with the informals and then the BOE. Those are the informals that were not able to be agreed upon successfully, and they went ahead and those property owners or representatives filed an official appeal with the Board of Equalization. That's not necessarily how many showed up, but that's how many we had scheduled for those prior years. So in just looking at the informal column, what do you notice about those numbers in relation to the year? Every other year is bigger. Thank you, Justin. And why do you think that is? Why do you think the odd years are larger than the even years?
Has something to do with this.
Reassessment. Again, he's getting 2 pizza cutters, so everybody else better catch up. So yes, so the informals in the odd years are typically much larger because of the impact of the reassessment in the odd year. But you'll notice that our ratio is pretty successful. Even in the odd years, we're still dealing with a very small percentage that actually elect to be heard in front of the Board of Equalization and present their evidence. All right, so the way that things used to be. So one thing that have been doing over the past couple of years is just trying to look at the process on how to improve. So if you want to improve in July, when do you need to start? You start in August. You start the year prior. So we are actually right now working on ways to get better for 2025. And we've done this for the last couple of years. And this year we took a pretty big step to look at.
I would say revolutionize the process.
Well, in the past, the appellant or the property owner had to bring their documentation and paper. And this is an example of one appeal, one commercial appeal. Photos, comparisons, comps, things like that. It's about a 90-page document. They have to bring 10 copies. And this could have color photos, it could have laminates, it could have charts, all kinds of stuff. We have 8 members of the board, so everybody in the board gets one, the clerk gets one, and then the assessor's office gets one. So the assessor's office has to do the exact same. We had to provide 10 copies, and we probably printed off in the past 2 years 15,000 sheets of paper. And that's color sheets, color graphs, color photos. So that's not only the paper, that's also the wear and tear on the printers. And if I print 1,000 sheets this month and I print 10,000 sheets next month, is my service bill going to be the same? Brent? No, it's not. They charge you more when you use your equipment more. You also use more toner. You use more service drums, all kinds of consumables that go into the use of those printers and copiers. So we first looked at that. We saw every July a spike in our service costs with Springfield Blueprint or Lakeland or whoever we were using at the time. And we also saw a huge issue what if we had a number wrong or a digit wrong? And we've already printed out 10 copies of this. We got to go back and change it. It might only be one page. We got to slide it in there. So what we did is we went digital this year for the ease of our office, and more importantly, the ease of the appellants, the property owners, who do this once every maybe once a lifetime, maybe once every 4 or 6 or 8 years. They don't do this every day. So we're the experts. So when we're the experts, we need to show some grace and make it as easy as possible for the people that don't do it every day. So we had some older units. These are Dell Latitude, and they're touch screens. They've got this removable keyboard with a mouse. And we started earlier this year, and we worked to make these available for the board. We had 11 of them. So every member of the board had one of these, and we were able to just have a PDF loaded on this device, and you didn't have to print off a phone book for each case. So when we go back, let's go back. Oh gosh, I went forward. Don't look at those. So when we went back to 2023, we had 183 cases. So 183 of this times 10 times 183. So it made it so much easier for everyone involved and so much more green, because the board members were frustrated seeing stacks and stacks of phone books getting thrown away every day. So last year we had multiple days of hearings for the 183 that we had filed, and it was just kind of sad and kind of frustrating. It made you want to do something else. So like I said, we've upgraded our technology, and when we make changes that are successful, we want to let the people know in this room, if you want to make a similar change, who helped us do it. So Thomas Wirtz and IS, we started back in
It was April.
March.
Yeah, March or April.
Yeah. So he had to take these had not been plugged in or used in several months. So he took these all, wiped them clean, put a fresh version of Windows 11 on there, turned these into kiosks. So there's
So
no.
basically, we wanted to give these tablets to the board and make them just very easy to use. We didn't want anything. It doesn't need Microsoft 365. We don't need Word, PowerPoint. We just need Adobe Acrobat PDFs. Like that's all they need to look at. And so we asked, what do you have? And there's a thing called kiosk mode that they put on here, and it's literally, there's no password to get into it. It's not connected to the network. You want to talk about that a little bit? How so the night before on the 16th,
Yeah.
we've got all the information from the appellants. We got all the information from our office. And it was the old put it on a USB drive and load up every single one so that they're ready for tomorrow.
Yep. And it made it easy for Julia in the clerk's office because she gets all the information emailed to her rather than 10 copies brought in. It allows the appellant, if they wish to, they could do it entirely by phone until the actual day of the Board of Equalization. So when we talk about making it easier for the appellants, for the property owners, they could send an email for the informal hearing. They could have a phone conversation with Melissa Davidson in the back row about their brand new warehouse that they feel is worth too much money on paper. And then they could email Julia in the clerk's office their appeal. And the only time they have to come in is one time. And it's first come, first serve. So they're here first, they get out, and it's easy. So it actually does make it easier for all involved. We also make changes that we talk about the first come, first serve. Several years ago, or 2 years ago when I first started, the appointments were every 15 minutes. So the appellant gets 5 minutes, the assessor gets 5 minutes to restate their case, and then there's 5 minutes of questions. And the questions are generally one question and a follow-up from each member of the board. So it's a nice, tidy little 15 minutes. But sometimes people that file for the Board of Equalization, they don't want to have a hearing for the Board of Equalization. They want to go to the State Tax Commission. And to go to the State Tax Commission, they have to have had an appointment with the Board of Equalization. So they will make appointments and intentionally not show. And that's okay. That's part of their rights and opportunities. But what it left for us was serious gaps in the schedule. So we would have a 9:15 and 9:30, and then we wouldn't have another one until 10:45. So it was frustrating. It was time consuming. Our staff in the office of the assessor, we would need to be here to answer questions if we had other things to contribute during the hearing process. So it really handcuffed us for the days that we had hearings. So what we did was we just basically told all of the appellants, hey, we're starting at 9, come at 8:30, get your name, get your number, and then have a seat. And it went very, very quick.
And we had folks here at 7:15, 7:30.
Yep,
I mean,
sitting out in the
sitting out
rotunda.
waiting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it went very quick, very smooth. Usually during the July hearing process, they will hear 2 or 3 cases, and then the board will take a break and go into what's called executive time. And that's when they make their decisions, their rulings. So they would have these breaks in the day. So they would hop into executive time, make their ruling on the first 2 cases that they heard, and then come back in and hear the next appointment at, say, 10:30 or 10:45. This time, they heard all 12, 14? They heard all 14 from start to finish. So they started at about 9:05. Lyle Foster gave them some housekeeping rules, kind of rules of the road, told everybody how the process was going to go. And then they just heard cases until about 12:15. And then for about 35 to 40 minutes, they made deliberations on those, and they were out of here in one day this year by 1 p.m. when we originally thought it was going to take at least 3 days. Do you have anything else to add?
No.
I realize I'm just been.
no, you did great.
So our cost savings, we estimate it to be approximately $12,000. When we take a look at our staff that has been occupied to be in the office for those hearing dates, all of the wear and tear on our equipment, all of the increased fees on our monthly subscriptions or our monthly service fees, again, to create those 10,000 sheets. So our savings won't be that much next year, but it will be a reassessment year. So we're going to have more cases and more hearing dates. And so we still feel like we're going to see quite a bit of savings in.
We're going to save a whole lot of trees. That's what we're going to do.
Save a whole lot of trees. We're not planting many, but we're
Yeah.
not cutting them down.
Yep.
And everybody in the Board of Equalization loved it. This is something that they've been asking for a while, as far as, boy, it sure is a shame to have all this paper getting wasted. So that's one thing that they all uniformly really appreciated. So we're already planning for next year, like I said, because we know next year is a what? Justin?
Yes, that's.
Yes, it is. I even gave you the, yeah, it's right there. So there's a picture of our current board makeup, a little different. We have a wonderful board, very diverse and representative of the county. But they do an excellent job, and they do it for basically a happy meal every month. So, so we want to make it as easy as possible for them to want to serve on this board, and they do an excellent job in helping us do our statutory obligations. You have anything to add?
No, that's it.
Do we have any questions from the room? I realize we kind of ran it. Yes, Tessa?
Do you have anybody ever argue that your valuation is too low for whatever reason? They just want it to be worth more to prove that their improvements added value. Do they ever argue?
Yes, we do. Brent, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. So yeah, we've had people call in who are trying to sell their home. They feel like the value that we represent is low, and they feel like that people look at our value based on the market value and say, "Wow, you're awfully low, and it's going to hurt my anticipated sell price that I want." Come out and reassess my property or look at the value of my property. And then other people also come in and say, "Well, I really want my property to be commercial property. Like, well, you'll be paying more tax." That's okay though, because I want to be able to sell it. So it's just a classification for us, and you never zone commercial. But we have a lot of people are concerned about that. We even had a case this year where someone called up and said, "Hey, we renovated our basement in 1992, and we didn't get permits, and we didn't tell anybody. Now they want to sell our house. You guys don't have that information. You weren't aware of it. They don't go in the basement." And so they called Kevin Barnes' office. Kevin's like, "Well, it's beyond the statutory limits of finding you for your permits." And so they wanted me to back tax to 1990. You can't do it. But we told them we're more than happy to come out, work with you, put that on her. Took care of them, and they're happy as little peaches. So
Yeah, over here.
Scott, did you have your hand? Okay, okay. Alan?
Of all the cases that go to the BOE, how successful is the successful?
You know, it's not about wins and losses, Alan. It's really, we don't, hey, it would be very, we really, we don't really, what we try to look at is how successful are we at being fair? And we really try to believe that we are very fair with the values.
Alan, I think this past July we were 11-3.
And two of those three
Or
were,
pushes.
it was kind of like Korea.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a tie.
You know, one of the things that you can do when you come to the board is, you know, tell them your life story in 5 minutes. And sometimes it lasts more than 5 minutes. And they're human beings, and they sometimes take pity on people. And they,
Yeah.
you know,
and that's
it's-
part of the human nature of
Yeah.
it all, and that's why it's not, you know, the three commissioners up there. That's why it's people with similar situations, similar business owners, similar property owners that are allowed to make those judgments, and then they will have very not heated discussions, but when they go to their executive time and talk about it, they can talk about their personal experiences and contribute that to the overall discussion process. But we're typically fairly successful, but you know, if we're wrong and we have to make a correction, then we do that. When we do that with a post haste.
The majority of
Mhm.
cases are commercial property.
Mm-hmm.
So like this year we had 14. Of the 14, only I think 2 or 3 were actually residential.
Right.
property. All the rest were commercial property. And that's the tendency that we see is the majority of the cases get reported equalization are commercial property. One, because they're more complicated cases, a lot more moving parts. We value commercial properties for different ways, income, sales and comparisons. And so those things are a little more complicated cases. And other ones really want to go to the state to argue their case, a lot of them. And like Christian said, saving paper, we had a case last year. They sent their evidence over in 2 banker boxes.
Mhm.
So a lot of paper.
When you said 11-3, does that mean 11?
We won 11. No. We won 11. They stayed the same. 11 stayed the same. 3 were slightly adjusted.
One was
And if you take
Yeah.
if you take the view of how much tax does that generate for the county, or is it taking away from the county? $20, $30, $100, $200? I mean, it's not much.
Yeah.
It's, and we're spending a lot of time on a very small sliver of money.
Yeah, so, Melissa?
Are all your BOE cases about that?
No, I am so glad you brought that point up, because when we talk about the three that were decisions made essentially against us, one of those decisions was not about value, it was about whether or not a portion of the building is exemptable. And it was basically a case of a exempt entity, an entity that's exempt from paying property tax. They were subleasing some space, and the sublease was to another exemptable entity. And there's some disagreement, but we found out, and that in the eyes of the Greene County Board of Equalization, they felt that those subleases should also be exempt. So it wasn't about value, it was simply about an exemption process. So thank you for
And
the
there's
question.
also discrimination and
Yeah.
value.
Right. Discrimination not being like we think of, I don't like him because he has a beard, so I'm gonna charge him more for his house. It's more of a statute. Yep. But excellent question. Thank you. Yes, in the back, in the lavender.
Do we know how many of our 2023 cases that we won went to the state tax commission?
That's a good question. And to get that answer, I would probably ask you.
So though we may have won those cases, those people still have the ability, if they disagree with the Board of Equalization, to go on to the next step, which is the state tax commission. And that's when it gets really important.
Right.
I
And
don't know.
yeah, I don't either. Some of them are,
In their case, they still go to the state tax.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, whether they win or
Yeah.
lose.
yeah, they just, in order to be empowered to go to the state tax commission, they have to have stood before the Board of Equalization. So, yes, sir. Oh,
So you said in order to go to the state, they would have to have an appointment with the BOE. So even if they don't show up, can they still go to the state?
that's an excellent question, because if they don't show up, what happens? We win. So there's a ruling, there's a decision made. So whether it's in absentia or if it's a actual give and take of information and the board rules in our favor as the assessor's office, as long as there's some type of a decision made, that empowers them to go to the state tax commission. 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Do you have frequent flyers, like people who are here every year get the same information?
We do, and those are generally in the commercial sector, and those are generally represented by tax reps. So we have a lot of situations where a tax representative will file, and sometimes, not recently, but in the past, sometimes tax reps have stated that they're representing a business, shown up and argued on the business's behalf, having never contacted the business because they're trying to get some type of a percentage of the difference. That's usually how they get their funds. They get like 15, 20% of the difference of the tax bill because they were successful in changing the valuation. But we have a lot of frequent flyers. in
So
that.
there's a deadline for cases, and that deadline is usually the week before the board goes, and you'll get those type of people who drop tons of cases at 5 p.m. on the last day on Julia, and then it's a scramble.
Because
It's
by
a
design,
complete
they're
scramble.
doing it strategically by design to give us less time
To
to make it
overwhelm us.
a defense. And in fact, this year, we had someone that missed it by that much. So, and several cases were submitted after the deadline, and it was strategic on their behalf, because it was one submission of, I think, 6 different properties owned by 3 different companies. So it's just kind of a game that they play. But we try to look at that. July is a very tight month. There's statutes that tell us that when the deadline is, when we have to be done by, and then we have to have an exchange of information and build some evidence in that, and it can be a very tight month. So when we talk about 2025, we're talking about maybe moving the informal up a little bit, talking about maybe starting some cases before the deadline, because just because the deadline is on July 7th doesn't mean that we can't have a hearing on July 2nd. On somebody that filed earlier in the process. So all things that we're looking at. Yes, Alan, you're going to be the last one.
What's the deadline for STC rules?
That is a fantastic question.
The answer is?
The answer is 30 days after the,
Receive a decision letter.
Or-
September
30th.
is later.
right. And in this case, it would be the decision letter because we got those out very efficiently this year. Excellent question.